Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to 2 Minute Talk Tips. This week's tip: do you need that animation? PowerPoint is a powerful tool. It's right there in the name. But of course, as all friends of Peter Parker know, with great power comes great responsibility. The number of animations and transitions that you can do in PowerPoint is mind blowing, but you have to use them responsibly. Each line of your list of bullet points can fly in when you change slides or click a button. They can flip and twist and bounce and fade and flash. You can make each letter on a slide even appear one at a time, accompanied by a sound effect. You can make your clip art zip in and zip out and tumble around. You can even make an entire slide turn into a paper airplane and just fly right off the screen. You can crumple them up like pieces of paper and toss them away. But really, why? Most of the time, when people use animations, they don't use them to expand on a point, to focus the audience, or to clarify a concept. Animations cause problems when you want to print your slides. They slow down the presentation as you go through the builds in the slides. If you're on a webinar online, that's one more item you probably need to take out of the deck before you can actually begin presenting. Slide creators, unfortunately, often put in animations because they're fun and cool. Don't do that. Most of the time, they're distracting, cliched, or amateurish. For each animation or fancy transition that you put in a slide deck, be sure to ask yourself, how does this help? If you can't come up with a simple and clear explanation for how that animation or that transition is going to help you more effectively make your point, then take it out. Stick around, and after the break, we're going to talk about speaking deliberately. Welcome back. Let's talk about speaking deliberately. Have you ever left work and next thing you know, you're sitting down in front of the TV at home with a snack in hand and realize you don't exactly remember how you got there? This is such a common end state in many people's lives that we don't even pay attention to the process of driving home, turning on the TV, grabbing something from the fridge, and then sitting down. It's not that we forgot the process, it's just that we weren't paying attention to it while we were doing it. And we managed to do all those interim steps without really even thinking about it. More narrowly focused, have you ever wondered how come there's an empty bag of mini Reese's peanut butter cups in your lap when there was a full bag there when you started that episode of Hotel Impossible? By the way, if you watch an episode of Hotel Impossible, the problem with the hotel is always the hotel owners. I spent much of my life biting my fingernails. It wasn't because I was nervous. It was just something that I did. I don't even remember why I started doing it as a little kid. I did it without even thinking about it for years. It took a great deal of willpower to eventually stop doing it mostly. And even then, my success rate is about 80%. It especially takes a hit when I'm in stop and go traffic in the car. This happens in public speaking too. Have you ever asked yourself, how did I end up on the wrong side of the stage? Or why am I tired from pacing? Or why did I say and ah so many times? The brain is an amazing machine, of course. While it doesn't multitask with high level thinking very well, what we generally think of as multitasking at meetings or throughout the workday is really task switching as we switch from paying attention to doing email and going back and forth and things like that. It does run a whole bunch of background scripts all the time. Some of those are important scripts that need to run in the background. They cover things like, how to breathe, how to circulate blood, how to process that breakfast burrito you got on the way into the office, how to stand up, how to fight off an infection. And yes, I realize that medical professionals may want to correct me on some of those, given some of the latest neurological studies that are out there, but you get the point. Unfortunately, the brain is also really good at setting up additional scripts later in life that govern things like how to chew your fingernails, how to pace a stage, how to say and ah, how to unwrap a Reese's mini peanut butter cup. The result is that we do a lot of stuff without even thinking about it. The brain runs all this stuff in the background to make room for the quote unquote more important neural activity of making a point or reading an email. We should be grateful for all those scripts that run in the background that bring value to our lives and keep us alive. And we ought to put a stop to the ones that don't bring us actual value. And the key to doing this is to act deliberately. Focusing on doing things deliberately can have a positive impact on our lives, and there are plenty of podcasts and web resources out there and books and seminars that will talk all about mindfulness and thinking through our actions in a broader context. So I'm not going to go full lifestyle guru here. But there are three main areas that I want to touch on in the context of public speaking. First, break the rules deliberately. Second, move deliberately. And third, use silence deliberately. First, let's talk about breaking the rules deliberately. I've offered a lot of guidance over the past 17, 18 episodes here. You've gotten more guidance from your coaches and your teachers, I'm sure. And many times when a speaker is ineffective, it's because they're not really following best practices for a speaker. Maybe they're speaking only in a monotone, or they're not making eye contact, or they're reading their slides, or they're throwing time limits to the wind, or their slides have too many words on them, or their fonts are too small, or their slides are blocked by pillars, or they are standing behind a desk, or they're turning around and facing away from the audience, or any number of other things that they could be doing that make them ineffective. But does that mean that every speaker who does these things, who breaks these rules, is ineffective? No. Some of those speakers are deliberately breaking the rules of public speaking because doing so is going to help them make the point that they want to make. Maybe it's going to create a moment. Maybe it's going to emphasize an argument that they're making. Maybe it's to draw a contrast to different things, or any number of other reasons that they could be choosing to do that. The key, though, is that before you break the rules, you need to know the rules, and you need to know them well enough to know when it is appropriate to break them in order to get the result you want. Ineffective speakers break the rules unintentionally, whether it's because they don't know the rules or the best practices, or because they're just not comfortable with it, or because they're not practiced enough. And so they're not choosing to break the rules. They're not choosing to go around the guidance. They're just doing it. But if you know the rules, if you have a reason to do it, if you're going to break the rules of effective speaking, just don't do it through accident or neglect. Do it deliberately. Like navigating around the rules, it's also important that when you move on your stage, you move deliberately. More than once, I have been speaking and I found myself on the wrong side of the room. Perhaps my computer is over on the right side, and suddenly I find myself reaching the end of the points I want to make on that slide, standing on the left side of the room. The problem is that now my laptop is way over on the other side, and I have to get back over there to click a button to advance the slide so I can continue with my talk, and I do this when I don't happen to have a slide clicker in my pocket. The first time I did it, I actually had to sort of sheepishly rush back over to the laptop to make the slides move. Now, if that happens, and it really shouldn't, I'll usually ask the audience a question or solicit questions from them as I purposely walk back to the computer. And that sort of covers up for that error of being on the other side of the room. This problem arises when I cross the room without thinking about it while I try to land my point. Crossing the room, pacing, rocking back and forth, knocking things over with hand gestures, fiddling with stuff in your pockets. These are all things that happen when the motion scripts are running on their own in the background of our minds. We're doing this stuff, we're walking around, we're pacing around without even thinking about it. If you're going to move from one side of the room to another, that's fine. Just do it with purpose. It can be a great way to make a transition from one point to another. And make sure you've already thought about how you're going to get back and when you're going to get back. If you're going to gesture with your hands, that's fine. That's great. Understand what you're trying to do. Don't let the scripts in your head try to burn off nervous energy by just pacing back and forth like an animal in a cage. Move because you have a reason. Move because you want to. Move because it's a destination you want to take your audience to. And when you move deliberately, your audience will be happy to come with you. Finally, use silence deliberately. Many people feel slightly uncomfortable with silence. It makes them listen to their own thoughts, and that's one way a speaker can use silence effectively. We often feel as speakers that we need to fill each and every moment with sound, and that's not true. When we choose not to say anything for a moment, our silence can scream louder than our boldest font. Silence is good when you choose it. It's a way to help land a point. It's a way to help an audience think about something you've just said. If you've been saying a lot and speaking very quickly and covering a lot of stuff, suddenly you can slow down, land a sentence, and then take a moment to be quiet. It's a powerful tool when it's used deliberately. It's not so good when the silence is accidental. If you're silent because you're confused by your slides or because you forgot what you were going to say or you just freeze, the audience is going to notice and they will know that something is wrong. And then you'll know that something is wrong, and that just compounds the problem. The best way, of course, to prevent this from happening is to be well prepared. That's how you prevent the random silences from popping up when you don't want them to. But when you use silence deliberately, when you use it to emphasize a point, you come across as thoughtful, confident, and deliberate. So now it's time to deliberately wrap things up for the day. What are your thoughts on acting deliberately? What scripts most often run in the back of your brain? And what are your favorite deliberate steps to take? Let us know in the comments for episode 18 at 2minutetalktips.com. And if you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, please make sure you subscribe to 2 Minute Talk Tips in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode, and tell a friend. That's it for this week. I'm Bill Monroe. Make sure you actually need that animation and speak deliberately. It's all part of how you can grow as a speaker. And remember, don't get best, get better.